Here comes my favorite part, Pod Squad. This is what it's like when worlds collide. College radio and podcasting collide tonight, because this is the show where Ohio throws down. Ohio is on fire. I am the host, Daniel Diesel. We're back live this Wednesday night. We're in Fairborn, Dayton, Ohio, for another great episode of Ohio is on Fire. Tonight we're celebrating podcasting, and we're celebrating the last day of a very special challenge that I have been a part of for the last 28 days. My guests for tonight, they're going to be live in the studio later on the show. We got members of the Gem City podcast. IzzyRock, Mark, and Libby is going to be here live tonight. Also, we got the two members of Coffee with Idiots, Brandon Berry and Tyler Wise. They're going to be in the house tonight. It's going to be amazing. And of course, later on the show, we're going to come together and have a roundtable discussion. And I am joined, of course, I have a lot of listeners tonight that was a part of the 28-Day Podcast Movement Challenge. It was on Facebook. It was private to those that wanted to learn about podcasting and launch their podcast within 28 days. I made a pilot for a podcast, and it's available now. Right now, it's called Ohio is Wrestling, because I'm a lifelong fan of pro wrestling. And it's a show that is dedicated to fans of pro wrestling that are from the state of Ohio. I made a 48-minute trailer, and it's awesome. 48-minute pilot, I keep calling it a trailer. It's actually a whole show. But it's a pilot. I'll have it available for the next month, and then I will delete it because I will need some more time. If I am to do this show full-time, the Ohio is Wrestling show, I would need some time to work on it and to get a crew together. But you can you can listen to the pilot episode at... First, you can find it at facebook.com/OhioIsOnFire show, and you can now go to SoundCloud, where I am looking to put up some raw material of these Ohio's on Fire recordings. You go to soundcloud.com/OhioIsOnFire show. So do those two things and check out the trailer. You'll be there for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then I'm going to take it off the interwebs and see what happens to the future of the show. But a lot of you guys have launched a podcast, because the main goal of this 28-Day Podcast Movement Challenge is to either launch a podcast on a regular basis, or to at least make a trailer, or to release a pilot, which is what I did. I made a pilot. A lot of you guys made really cool shows, and I'm going to shout out some names right now. I'm going to shout out once again to Andrea Smith Gage. Andrea Smith Gage, I hope I said your last name right. Hopefully you made it to the web feed of the show. So there's her. Also, one lady that's been really excited about this challenge the whole month. She's had several pictures where her mouth is wide open. She's happy as a clam. Morgan Wall. And she left a note saying, rounding out the 28-day challenge with an approval to Spotify. How cool. What a way to end the month. Great work, everyone. And also, this group, we have a nickname. We are called the Pod Squad, as that's the name that we refer to each other as during the 28-day challenge. And I got to give a shout out to two of the members. They are in charge of this challenge. Jared Easley and Dan Franks. Of course, they are in charge of the big podcast movement group, which once a year they have a big conference somewhere in this country. They have their own big group on Facebook. And of course, they created, for the first time ever, they have made this challenge, the 28-Day Podcast Movement Challenge. I don't know the future of this challenge. This is the first time they've ever done this. I like to think they'll do more, perhaps with new students, or perhaps if I'm ready to up my game, I could take it again. But I would take this class again if I was ready to release a podcast. Now I know the secrets of this challenge. Of course, a shout out to Ellen Colby. She released the podcast called Unsoiled, and then other shout outs I'll try to make for those that have followed. This is like the first set of shout outs. I'll try to make more later in the show. Gregory Bernard Anderson, shout out to him. Then Sarah Lee Kane, she said, no selfie, like seriously, my son just stole chocolate and is foaming at the mouth, and we think it's funny. But just wanted to thank Jared and Dan for putting this together. It was super helpful. And then once again we got El Ray Mack. I find there will be a large number that will not have the first podcast up, as conditions may not have allowed for clear recording. With everything else done, sad they don't get a chance to compete in the final drawing, out of their control, even they knew, did all the rest of the required. It's because there's actually a contest. The top 3 people that get drawn by random will win prizes, with the grand prize getting to go to Philadelphia, all expenses paid. They get to go to the podcast movement conference. That's going to be this July. It's in Philadelphia. Of course, they go to various places. Last year they were elsewhere. They've been to Florida before, I think. But this coming summer of 2018, they'll be in Philadelphia. And in second place, they will win one-day passes, so they can go to the conference for one day. But the grand prize, you get to check the whole thing out. It's 3 to 4 days long, and you get to enjoy the sights and sounds of Philadelphia, that Philadelphia freedom, as they say. Shout out to Beth Phillips. This might be the first time I ever stuck to a month-long challenge. So congratulations to you, Beth Phillips, as she's working to get her podcast going. Then we got Jim Jacobus. Thanks, Pod Squad. And then the last shout out I will make for now, I'll make more later. We got Allie Torben. Thanks to Dan and Jared for keeping me on track all month. It was a tremendous help. Alright, so this is just the tip of the iceberg for this show, as Jim Say Podcast and Coffee with Idiots will be on in just a little bit. You know what? I think it's now time for everyone's favorite segment. It is now time for OMVP, and that stands for Ohio's Most Valuable Pedestrian. For those of you that are listening for the first time, in case you don't know what this challenge is, what this award is, it's a recognition to someone from the state of Ohio, or sometimes a group of people from the state of Ohio, that did something cool recently. And I shout them out and give the backstory, and they are forever engraved in the OMVP Hall of Fame. Of course, there's an article and a backstory that goes to the OMVPs, and this has something to do with podcasting, but it's over, the article is the UTC, the University Echo is what it's called. So the website has a funny name. It's the UT Echo, the UTCecho.com/podcasting professor. It's a student newspaper at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, because it involves someone that's lived their whole life in Ohio, and they were involved in the Wright State community for years. So here's the backstory. Will Davis' knack for narrative has taken him from film to radio to podcasting, now landing him to UTC's Metro Building in 255, training the next generation of storytellers. This semester, Davis is teaching 2 sections of podcasting, which is classified as a beyond the classroom class, in which students' time is split between learning a skill and being sent into the community to hone and skill in the form of an ambitious creative project. In this case, that project is a podcast. Our class has partnered with the Hamilton County Department of Education, and we will go to several schools in the district to tell their stories in episodic podcast form, said Will Davis. Students will be placed in groups and sent to an organization to find stories they feel need to be heard and use the skills Davis taught us in the classroom to bring the stories to life. We'll be embedded in this organization, and we will just kind of look around, keep our eyes open, and figure out what's going on and say, this is the story I think really needs to be told right now, says Davis. Maybe it's the story that everyone's talking about. Maybe it's a story that no one is talking about. With millions of potential stories and stakeholders across Chattanooga, Davis is incredibly excited to see what his students create. And I'll read this one last quote, and then I'll move on with my thoughts. The quote from Davis: I've done versions of this before, but this one is much larger. This is like huge, Davis said. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have something at the end of this that's going to be really cool. So that is an article based that features Will Davis, and yes, he was a former member of the WYSO back in Ohio. Well, I'll read this part. Back in Ohio, Davis landed a job at WYSO, which is the public radio station of Yellow Springs, an NPR member station. There he created podcasts, including one he continues to regularly produce, Veterans Voices, which has been renewed for a 4th season. So he still has a hand in some programming at WYSO. And he used to be a staff member here at Wright State University. I've had a chance to network with this individual, Will Davis. He's given me some good advice. And he did encourage me to find a way to restart Ohio is on Fire. So I do personally thank him for giving me some advice, because the longer that I was on the sidelines, the longer that I was going to lose my skills. So I'm working my way back because I was gone for 2 years, and he gave me some good advice. It's best to just put yourself out there any way possible, and the money will come later. So I have Will Davis to thank for that. And it's cool that this article was made on him. It came out just recently. This article, I think, it came out earlier this month. So it's really good timing. And you know what, Will Davis, you're a really smart guy. You are training the future of podcasting. Young kids everywhere are learning your techniques, and your wisdom. And you taught the people of Yellow Springs your wisdom, the people of Wright State your wisdom. Now you're teaching the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga the wisdom of podcasting. And you, sir, you've won an award. That's not really an award, but still an award to me, dang it. You are, for this episode, OMVP. Now,
you listen to WWSU 106.9 FM, Fairborn, Dayton, Dayton's right choice.
and we are back with Ohio is on Fire. I am with my first guest of the evening as part of this podcast movement special. They have a really popular podcast based on the Dayton, Ohio scene, and they've really kicked open the podcast store in Ohio in general. I'm really happy to have these guys on. We got IzzyRock and Libby. They are from Gym City Podcast. They're waving at me. Say hello, you two.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for being on here. Now, of course, a lot of the other people that are not here tonight that work on this podcast is we got Mark, and then the two Kevs, as we like to call them. They help work on this podcast. So the five of you, on a regular basis, have some input on this podcast. What I want to know is, how do you guys bond? Like, how do you guys trust each other and find a way to bond in order to peacefully make these podcasts?
Well, it's weird how relationships develop these days.
Yeah.
And I think through networking and finding out what people are about or what they got going on, you kind of stumble upon relationships sometimes. And Libby and I, we joined on Gym City Podcast, back in 2013?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was back in 2013 for me. And a gentleman named Eric started Gym City Podcast.
Yes.
And then he ended up leaving in 2015, and we kind of took it over. And Libby and I became the ones that booked the shows and scheduled things and edited and produced and all that stuff. And then along the way, I wanted a Friday show. We release podcasts on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I wanted a Friday show.
Yeah.
And so I thought Kev Nash and DJ Killer Kev.
Yes.
They're involved in the urban community, the black community, and Kev Nash is a DJ on Hot 102.9.
Yes, I've heard of him, yes.
I enjoyed their show, and I thought, we don't really have an outreach to the black community, and I thought, why not bring them on? And they've been releasing podcasts on Fridays, so we take their podcast. They have their own podcast on their own feed. They release it on like a Sunday and a Monday.
Okay.
And then we release it on Friday on our feed. So people can still listen to theirs if they want.
So they have their own website for their version of the show, and then they... Oh, okay. I did not know that. I've only ever seen the Gym City Podcast website. I did not know this. I do now, so thanks for a heads up. Libby, care to elaborate? What's a good way for you to bond? Like, how do you know to trust these people?
Well, actually, I started off as a guest on Gem City Podcast.
Okay.
And I was super nervous. I had never been on a podcast, and they just made me feel super comfortable.
Cool.
And I always have tons of stuff to talk about. So I think that, along with, at the time, it was just a bunch of guys, and I think that they wanted to have a female perspective.
Yes.
So I thought that was really cool and very inclusive, just like they were reached out to Kev with the African American community. So they purposely wanted to be inclusive and find out about the things that I was passionate about. So once I lived through my first podcast as a guest, that was when they asked me to be a host, and I realized it wasn't a scary thing. It was just having conversations like I have all the time.
Yeah.
So it kind of became a natural fit, and actually Mark, who's one of our other co-hosts, I've actually worked with for many years, so I already had some of those relationships established. So so it's been a great experience. Podcasting probably wasn't something that I personally would necessarily think that I would take on. I'm very grateful for the people in the sort of, I would call back of house, who makes it magically appear on iTunes, because that's not my forte. So I definitely think having a team, especially when we put out as many podcasts as we do 3 times a week, and to kind of further elaborate on what Izzy was saying, so we do release the You Can't Make This Up on Friday. On Wednesdays is Izzy's Music Storyteller podcast. And then on Monday, we have my podcast come out, or my sort of under the umbrella of Gem City podcast, which we kind of call the Couch Conversation.
Yes.
So that's kind of your traditional podcast conversation, and we have just a variety of charities and business people and politicians and movers and shakers. And so that's kind of our more like open format time that...
And that podcast, the podcast she's talking about, which I think it's moved from couch conversation to community conversation.
Community conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I would agree with that.
Podcasts are a way for people to really expand their thoughts and expand ideas. With sound bites on news programs, you get sound bites. You get seconds of audio. With a podcast, you can hear well thought out ideas, and they can move things forward. And we recently had a podcast about the disinvestment of West Dayton, and we got a great reaction from that podcast because people were hearing things that they weren't aware of, things like redlining and how our communities have been affected through racism throughout the years, to be straight up honest.
Actually, like racial public policy that a lot of people aren't aware actually still exists to this day. Like insurance is so much more expensive, and all these different factors that make living in certain parts of our community a lot more difficult financially and just livability, lifestyle-wise. So I think one of the things we kind of aim for with those community conversations is to hear from people who you don't hear from in the mainstream media. Kind of giving voice to the voiceless. Because on our podcast right now, we don't have sponsors, and we don't really have to answer to somebody. Which that happens a lot in your mainstream media. They have to be concerned about sponsorship and their readership, and so there's a lot of freedom in podcasting. And I think that's something that's been very, very liberating. I think for a lot of people, they, even if they do a podcast with us, and a lot of people hear it or not a lot of people, I feel like just giving people that opportunity to have a voice is just really important.
Yes, that's important to me. I kind of strive for that when I do these Ohio's on Fire shows. I can relate to that sentiment right there, that mission statement, if you will. Now, this podcast is all about the city of Dayton. So I want to ask you two, why is Dayton a good subject for podcasting? What makes it a great subject?
I'll let you touch on it first.
Wow, that's a good one. Well, I mean, I think that everyone who, especially Izzy and I, are just really passionate about the city in general. I think that there's just a lot of potential here. That a lot of times, like you see those bumper stickers from Tumbleweed that, it's all right here if you've never been somewhere else. And I think that, we've kind of dogged ourselves for so long, and not that we don't have challenges, and that's one of the things we do talk about on like the community conversations are our challenges. But I also think that there are so many positive things that are, have happened here, that are continuing to happen, and kind of shining a light on those. I mean, I know, we had a conversation, Mark and I, with Polish Girls, and I mean, he was brought to tears by, a 15-year-old who's doing her own charity that's gone national. It's like franchised out of Dayton, and there's just so many cool stories that happen. And most of the time on the mainstream news, all you hear about is shootings and
I agree, shootings, opioid, drugs,
and stuff like that. And even we've had a couple podcasts about the opioid epidemic, but like the most recent one we did was with a veteran who got addicted to opioids after he got wounded, and just kind of shining a light on like, not all opioid addicts are losers. Some of them are veterans. And what productive can we do to help make our city better? It's not just like, we want to talk about the negative things or the challenges, but we want to actually find solutions to some of those. And I think Dayton's got a lot of heart, and I think we just need to kind of reframe how we feel about our city, and that's kind of one of the reasons that we're passionate about doing this podcast.
Excellent. That's really cool. Oh, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I grew up in East Dayton. I experienced the really hard times living in Dayton, going to Dayton public schools.
Yeah.
I was very much part of a dysfunctional family who grew up on welfare and grew up in a system where I could have easily ended up in jail or ended up in a very negative place in my life. What I think saved me was music, was going to shows with friends, going to see local bands playing, and seeing kids my age making music in these rundown, Rebos and
That's
Electrician's
awesome.
Hall and things like that back in the day. And as a kid who really loved music and was aware of bands like Guided by Voices back in the 90s, the Breeders, and various other bands that came out of that era, like Brainiac.
Yeah.
When I began working with Gym City Podcast, and we volunteer, by the way. When I say work, I mean volunteer to help Gym City Podcast.
Yeah.
I knew that my passion for music and my love of all genres of music, I could help expose local music through podcasting. And so that's what my introduction for Gym City Podcast was. I was pretty much just doing episodes where I would go and interview bands. And then for a while I had them interview or answer questions, and then I wasn't really interacting with the bands. And now I do, and we've featured a lot of different artists from all different genres, and that's what the Wednesday Storyteller episodes are. And when you're talking about Dayton, Dayton is the home of funk.
Yes.
Bands like the Ohio Players with the song Roller Coaster and Fire that you can put on at any party and you'll get the party jumping.
Yeah.
Roger Troutman, Zap, I Want to Be Your Man. Like, how classic is that? Like, and then to have bands like Guided by Voices come out of here in the 90s, and nowadays with so much access to everything that you don't know where to find different music. And I feel like Gym City Podcast has shined a light on artists that may have gotten overlooked, because we don't just have people who have thousands of likes. I'll get people on who have barely done anything in the music scene, but if I happen to like their music, or I think that person is a good person, I want to shine a light on what they do. And for me, that's why it's so important to showcase Dayton, because Dayton is such, it has such an eclectic blend of artists from music, from all walks of life that do many different things. And I think it's important to give them a voice.
All right, now, is there a particular episode of Gym State Podcast that you two are proud of?
Wow. There's a lot.
I think recently we've had a couple of really special ones, and I think it's kind of part of the reason that we've actually have over 500 episodes of the Gym City Podcast, which is pretty crazy. So it's hard to pick an absolute favorite. But I think as far as the music goes, I would say that all of the tremendous work Izzy's done to capture all of the Canal Street stories.
Yes.
Mick Montgomery recently passed away.
Yes, I heard about that.
All of, right before he died, getting all of that documented, literally like days before he passed away, Canal Street stories, and then all the stories from his memorial service.
Man.
I feel like is amazing, and it's sort of a way to kind of time capsule and capture stories that if we weren't doing this would just be kind of lost, Yeah. And recently, this episode is not out, but I just recorded it on Friday, and I'm super excited. But
cool.
One, it relates to a podcast that we did already do with Dayton Contemporary Dance Company. I interviewed the founder. Dayton Contemporary Dance Company is one of the oldest contemporary dance companies in the United States, and hearing the story of how that started in 1968, which is the height of segregation, and although we didn't have that in Dayton, there were still, you could not teach African American students in schools. So the founders of the Dayton Ballet actually started to teach the founder of the Dayton Contemporary Dance Company on the side separately. Wow. So how all of that came together was really moving, but they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, and all these dancers came into town last weekend, and just incredibly inspiring stories, and I just felt like it was sort of a 50th anniversary time capsule, and it was just super moving. I'm a dance enthusiast, so I think sometimes capturing those sort of time capsule type of anniversaries or significant moments or people coming back to Dayton and retelling their stories. It's just something that I think is really neat that we get to do.
Yes. Now I want to ask you too. You guys do often play music on your shows. You've had independent music on there. I know one episode you had the Talking Heads aired on your shows. How do you guys get past red tape to play music on your shows? What do you do?
I'll take that one. And I will say, all right, I do all the editing behind the scenes for Gym City Podcast.
Yeah.
And the Canal Street Stories one, I would definitely recommend that Libby mentioned. It's to hear Mick Montgomery on there and people giving basically a memorial before the gentleman passed away a week later.
Yeah.
For me, that's the best. But when it comes to editing and it comes to podcasts and it comes to music, back in 2012 when I first started doing podcasts, it was the Wild West. You had people that did podcasts that featured music all the time. And it wasn't a big deal, it wasn't an issue. And now I realize, because now iTunes and places like that will go and take your podcast down if you have recorded music on there. Yeah. So I wouldn't advise anybody doing podcasts in the future to put any music that could be targeted like that. Copywritten. I try, like, if I do it, I try to put like 30 seconds of a song, kind of a fair use type situation. As Libby mentioned earlier, we don't get sponsored by the podcast. The podcast is not making money. We don't have any sort of funds coming in. So it really is punk rock pirate radio.
Yeah.
Anybody who remembers, what's that movie?
Pump Up the Volume.
Pump Up the Volume. As somebody who was a big fan of pirate radio and hearing Howard Stern just say whatever he wanted when you heard certain radio, I've always loved that about podcasting. So for me, I kind of ignored it, hoping that, well, hopefully we don't have to worry about it anymore. Nowadays, I wouldn't put it on there at this point after reading some podcast blogs and podcast groups that I follow. I probably wouldn't do it again, but you know, if they want to take it down, like that particular podcast you're talking about was for an event anyway that has already passed, and some of our podcasts have been about events where the re-listen value isn't there as much.
That's something we've kind of changed now. Is we're more, you know, we originally had use the podcast for a lot of promotional things, so charities that were having events and stuff like that. And then we're kind of more conscious about the longevity of our episodes. So we've turned off from that, not just for the longevity, but the actual logistics of getting the podcast out in time for it to be a promotional thing for events. So we have kind of stayed away from events, and we're trying to kind of make our content just longer lasting and more relevant as we go forward.
Yeah, and we have a lot of access to local music, and so a lot of the local bands all use their music. Do you ask them beforehand, like say, hey man, I'm going to play your music on my show? Do you tell them about it beforehand? Generally, I have reached out sometimes, but for the most part, if the band has already been on there on a podcast, I imagine that they don't care that we use their music.
So to clarify, on his Storyteller episodes, every episode does feature the band's music on there, so they're basically already giving us permission to use it. Yeah, they give us permission. And the community conversations, I will release some of those songs that we've done on the Storyteller episodes as the end of Libby's podcast. So we have permission from the bands by them being on and sharing the music with us in the first place. Cool, okay, because I hate to see you feature a song that someone and they didn't like your show and they come beat. I don't want to see you getting beat up, Mark, or I'm sorry, IzzyRock and Libby. I don't see that happening. Well, I think the only way we'd get beat up is through lawyers and through people telling us, hey, don't use that anymore. Which a lot of podcasters kind of expected that to happen at some point, but a lot of them were pretty much like the Wild West. We'll deal with it when it comes. All right. But like I said, I probably wouldn't do it at this point. I think that was last year when we had that Talking Heads tribute show. Yes. And it was an awesome tribute show, by the way. It was amazing. Cool.
And we are back. With Ohio is on fire. I am the one and only Daniel Diesel, and we are here in Fairborn, Dayton, Ohio, live for the Podcast Movement Special. I got my second guest of the evening. They have been around for about a year plus, and they are really good friends, and they have a really quirky show that's based out of the Dayton, Ohio market. I got Brandon Berry and Tyler Wise from the show Coffee with Idiots. Say hello, you two. You're mic'd up.
How you doing, Danny?
Yes, well, thank you for being here. Yes.
Thanks for having
Now,
us.
I think you two are smart. So why is this show called Coffee with Idiots?
Well, why is it called Coffee with Idiots, Tyler?
Well, we've asked this question several times on our show, actually. Really, we don't think very highly of ourselves. I think that's the idea. That's sort of our shtick, is that we're self-deprecating.
This Coffee with Idiots was actually a thing that we created years ago. Then we kind of brought it back. Actually, twice we brought it back.
Yeah, it started as a comedy sketch kind of thing on a stage. That was the original idea.
Oh, boy.
It did not work out.
At an open mic show, we were going to do it.
Yeah.
We realized nobody would actually want to watch that, though, so we decided to put it online as a podcast.
Exactly. Then we did it the first time, and that sucked. We did an episode, and
it was very boring.
Just a life in the day of a college freshman, which everyone wants to hear about. Then a couple years later, 2 or 3 years later, we brought it back. Now how many episodes we got? 30?
30.
Yeah.
We just put our 30th one out.
That is awesome, you two. Now, I want to know, you two do, along with Coffee with Idiots, you got TBTV, which came out recently. You two do a lot together. Sure. So how do you guys bond in order to trust each other and to make these projects on a regular basis?
We've known each other since high school, and we know...
Well, we've known each other since middle school.
Oh, that's right.
Brandon was actually my middle school bully.
Boy.
Yeah. We won't get into that today. But we became better friends in high school. And starting sophomore year, pretty much, we started sharing things that made each other laugh. And we always had these ideas going, but we never knew what to do with them until we discovered the wonders of public access television.
Yes.
With DATV. So we just started putting out a sketch show called TBTV.
Yes.
Yeah. And have you watched it?
I saw the first episode. It had Don Smith. He was Homeless Jerry.
Sure.
And you guys, how many episodes? Because you haven't released more episodes since then. I've only seen the first.
So we have 3 now.
3.
But actually, let me do a little plug here. March 5th, we're going to have our 4th one.
Cool.
Coming out, so
that's going to air on DATV when it comes out.
That'll actually come out probably the week after that, but it'll be on YouTube.
YouTube, okay, because I don't get DATV with my deal, but it's on YouTube. I watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So fans of YouTube and DATV, you can watch TBTV when it comes. It's like once a month, so it's like a periodical show. Just give heads up when the release schedule is.
Yeah, actually, every Monday at midnight.
Every Monday?
When you can watch it.
Okay.
TV, yeah.
Not necessarily new episodes.
Sure.
But
just a replay.
They show the older ones. Yep.
Well, cool beans. Now, I have noticed that in the past you've had John McCormick on your show, and he's the Tai Chi teacher at St. Clair Community College and Rice University. Yep. 10 years ago, I had his class, so I do remember him. So I want to know, have you two done Tai Chi?
In high school.
I have not done Tai Chi in my life, but I took his yoga class. He also
I know that.
Yeah, I took his yoga class a couple years ago.
I know him from working at the Nutter Center. We work together.
Oh, okay, at the Nutter Center. What's this? What is it? So he has another job besides teaching Tai Chi and yoga. Is that what it is?
No, that's where he does it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought so, because I've had recreational classes at the Nutter Center before. So there you go. Well, that's cool. Yep. Yeah, he's a cool guy from what I remember of him. He's really peaceful. Mm-hmm. All that Tai Chi does that to you.
He knows a lot of information, too.
Too much sometimes.
A lot of stuff. He will just talk forever, too.
Yes.
If you let him, he will just go.
Yep.
He's just like a wind-up toy.
And unfortunately, we don't know when to press the stop button.
Yeah, that's
he likes to talk about the Antichrist, from what I remember. Like, he always guessed who he thought the Antichrist was. Sometimes it's Oprah. Sometimes he would change it to Donald Trump, and sometimes it would be
he plays both sides.
Yeah,
he did play both. That's true. He's playing both sides, so he's attacking all sides.
Yeah. He's a big fan of conspiracy theories. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I agree with that from his stories I've heard.
Yep.
But I want to know, for your TV and coffee vidiots, who you guys think your core audience is? Who you like to reach out to with your content?
Friends and family, first and foremost.
Sure.
Primarily friends and family, but beyond that, beyond the people that feel obligated to listen, people probably about our age range, people that like other podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very generic response, but we haven't really nailed down an audience, I don't think, yet.
So I think a lot of what we're trying to do, and a lot of podcasters do this too, if you have someone on your show that you don't necessarily know, they're going to branch that out to their group of people. Then from those group of people, we're going to get more people. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, slowly growing an audience. And
that's really all. Yeah, that's really the best way to do. You just got to take it one day at a time, really.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of like music fans because we've had, I think, 3 different music acts on now.
Yep.
One's in the works, I guess, now, and we've had comedians, because we've had, I think, two comedians in the area.
You're a comedian yourself, Daniel.
I'm part-time. I haven't done a show since late July. I've been focused on other things. I'm a guy that wears many hats. Gotcha. So I'm still interested, but I don't know when I'm going to do my next show, so we'll see. So that's the story to be continued.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, I know with the podcasting, it doesn't cost that much money to do a podcast, but TV, that's the big one. I don't see how people can do a television show. So I was wondering, what's the budget for you guys doing TV, and what do you guys consider before? And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what merchandise do you guys know to buy in order to make a TV show?
I know you need a camera, a microphone, and some writing skills.
At least one of each. Yes.
Yeah. So we only have one camera to ourselves, and that costs a pretty penny. The audio equipment.
We use other cameras.
Sure.
We just have the one quality.
Yeah. So if you're asking a budget for every episode, it's just whatever equipment it costs to start out, which we've pretty much had from the beginning. That is the amount, because it doesn't cost us to go to different locations, because we do it at our house mostly.
Yeah, mostly.
DATV studio, which is free to do, and then some other people's houses. So really a budget of $0.
Yeah. We painted a green screen in our third collaborator's basement.
Yep.
So that cost a little bit of money, but then again, that's another flat fee that's going to be there for a while.
Yep.
And whenever we need anything, we reuse a lot of props and stuff, and costumes are all just our own clothing, and some thrift store purchases here and there, but I mean, most episodes it's under maybe $15.
Yeah. If we really break it down, I would kind of be curious to see how much we've actually spent on everything.
Not much.
No. That's excellent. Good to watch the budget. But now you guys do the TV show and the podcast. What do you guys see yourself doing in the future, whether a year from now or 5 years from now? What do you guys hope to be doing in the future?
I'd like to be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Just with a bigger audience.
Yeah, sure. Essentially, yeah. Maybe doing another video type project. I'd like to do maybe a more scripted show that's less sketch based and more episodic.
I got a light bulb idea. What about movie musical? Yes, 2 hours long. It'd be like the Wild Wild West. It's you, Brandon, all your friends you know, and have a big $1 million budget. I see it happening. Go for it.
There we go.
Do it. Do it. We are back with Ohio's on Fire. It is now time for the roundtable as we discuss podcasting in general and how it's affecting our culture, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But we will talk about it. So, of course, I'm with IzzyRock. Yes, he's thumbs upping me. And then we got Libby is back. And then Tyler Wise and Brandon Berry. So all 4 of us, and myself, so the 5 of us are here. So we're going to talk about podcasting. Now, I want to know, what was the first podcast that either of you guys ever listened to that really got you interested in the podcasting platform?
My first podcast I really became interested in was a podcast called The Mediocre Show out of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And they started in 2005, I believe. And so they've been doing podcasts for a while. And they taught me about community. They have a community called Mediocre Nation. And they were, if I hadn't listened to that podcast and been involved with that community, I definitely wouldn't be doing Gym City Podcast.
Cool.
I got started with the Tim Ferriss podcast. I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan of his early books, and I'm kind of a life hack junkie, so that's how I got started listening to podcasts.
Cool.
For me, it was WTF with Mark Maron. I think that's probably one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, that's a big one.
One of the biggest ones. I may have had a Radio Lab in there somewhere around the same time, but mostly WTF because it was comedy, and we basically stole his format. So, anyway.
Yeah, same. He pretty much stole my answer. I love Mark Maron because he's just as anxious as I am, and yeah, it works out. So that's my answer, Daniel.
Yes, Mark. Yeah, I also. Well, that's fine. Well, actually, one of the first podcasts I listened to was also Mark Maron because that's like I guess he really was the first one to hit it big. With a lot of downloads, as they say. So yeah, I would say he was one of the early pioneers, mid 2000s, early 2010s. But now I want to know. Be honest with me. What is the difference between AM, FM radio, and podcasting that you guys notice?
A lot more freedom with podcasting.
But you can say whatever you want.
I am jealous. I agree. Well, I want to know in podcasting, there's a lot of ways it can go. Like, people do it to make money. Like, you have a big audience, you can sell ad space and all that good stuff and make money. But some people just want to get their message out. So, what I want to know from you guys is, how does one make money in podcasting? And what I also want to know is money, what's more important, making money or getting the message out there?
Are you asking for a friend or are you asking for yourself? I'm just curious.
Myself and a friend.
Okay. All right. Well, we have yet to make money on it, but definitely ad space works out. If it works for you, merchandise, which we haven't done either, which we should probably do.
We should sell stuff, yes.
I don't know. How do you guys make money over there?
No, we make $0.
Not yet. No. You guys got to keep at it.
It's definitely something
Yeah.
we've looked into, but this is like a volunteer project, so it's kind of been all our volunteer time just to get the episodes out thus far, but it's definitely on our to-do list to get our legal stuff together so we can start accepting money, which has been our kind of next big step.
Yeah, Gym City Podcast was started by somebody other than us, and all the info and everything is in his name, so it's kind of in the process of moving over to where we can take ads, and I would say the next wave is taking the initiative and actually going to local businesses.
Yes.
If you have a local podcast, ask them, would you like to advertise on this podcast? I honestly don't have a clue. I would like to know, but I think it takes time, effort, and a lot of hard work.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I agree. Yes, it takes a lot of hard work and sacrificing a lot of time is what I see, because you do got to make time to make these podcasts. And I think if you're not going to make money, hopefully you love podcasting, because I think if you don't really care for podcasting, you're going to be really upset that there's no money. And I can see how you've mentioned it a few times on Facebook, IzzyRock, that people kind of give up after 5 or 6 episodes. There's like a big graveyard of podcasts that didn't last very long. And it's important to do it right. I would agree with that statement that you just got to really like the podcast genre to do podcasting.
Yeah, as somebody who's done 700 and something episodes.
Yes.
Maybe, 541 episodes of Gym City Podcast we've released. I haven't done all of them. And then my own podcast, Tales from the Hard Side, which is on a free hosting site called TalkShoe that has been down for like 3 weeks.
Oh.
And so I've been doing this podcast since 2012. If you have any interest in getting into podcasts and it's all about money for you, stop. Don't get into podcasts, because podcasts are overwhelmed by so many different episodes. If there's a subject that you like, there's a podcast about it. And one thing I would advise don't set up one microphone in a table and have 6 to 8 people talk into that microphone.
Yeah, that's a bad ratio.
Find a niche, like whatever you lose yourself in, talk about that. So if you love music and you can talk about music for hours, there's other people who would like to hear you talk about music.
Yes.
So I would definitely advise doing whatever you love. If you are trying to make money off of it, good luck. It's a labor of love for sure.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Now, I want to know, there's a lot of subjects that are covered in podcasting. Like, it's almost there's almost no limit to what you can talk about, but perhaps there are a few. I want to know from you guys, is there a subject that you think is too taboo for a podcast?
No.
Probably not, no.
I think that's a unanimous decision.
I think there's one, personally, and that's anything that's obscene, because we have obscenity laws in the United States of America, and of course I know what they are, and I think you guys do too. I think if someone did something obscene on a podcast, I think they would be arrested. Really, that's really it, is obscenery.
But, Daniel, we're not under FCC regulation in podcasting, and I love podcasting, and I love the First Amendment because I believe you should be able to say with whatever you want.
Yes.
Obviously, there's going to be consequences with your job or with depending on what you talk about and how you approach the subject. But for me, I don't believe any subject is too obscene to talk about, depending on how you approach the subject. I've listened to some episodes that, trust me, they get into very sticky territory.
Yeah.
But never once do I get too offended by what they're talking about to turn it off. I think that if you approach podcasting in a way where, I don't want to offend anybody, well, I mean, why? Why are you doing? I mean, depending on what your podcast is. I don't want to tell anybody to just do whatever they want and think that they're going to get a wide audience, because there are going to be some people who listen to your content and go, well, I'm not going to listen to this person if they talk about this subject. Or if you get too political, you get too passionate about a certain subject, you're going to turn off an audience that way. But people love passionate discussions, and you may actually bring in people if you have a passionate subject that you talk about that happens to be obscene to some people.
Yes. Well, I guess for my idea of obscenity, it has to be pretty extreme. An example would be, say you go on a farm and you physically abuse a horse. That horse is suffering and he's crying in pain. You record that sound and you make it a podcast. I think that would be that'd be too much for me. So I think that's my idea. It has to be super, super extreme to be obscene. But other than that, I agree with a lot of what you said, IzzyRock, about like subject matters. As long as it's about subjects, no one is getting hurt, then yeah, it's fine, absolutely fine.
Daniel, are you aware of a documentary called Zoo?
No.
Okay, there's a documentary called Zoo about the death of a gentleman named Mr. Hands.
Yes.
Everybody has Google. I'll let them Google it. And it happened in Washington State. People, let's just say people had hobbies that would be obscene. So if I stumbled upon a podcast that people were hurting animals, I wouldn't listen to them. But would I want iTunes to say, we're going to take that down? I don't know, because you step into freedom territory.
Okay.
I think if like a law is not being broken, or like you said, if somebody's getting hurt, there's kind of like a separate set of laws that I think
that's important.
That,
Yeah, I think if someone get hurt and have that be recorded on any, whether it was podcasting or TV, and it was serious, I would hate to see that.
Yeah, I think that would be against the law in other ways.
Yeah, but depending on where they put the podcast out, you might not know where the person lives. A lot of people nowadays, they can release content. You have no idea where the content is being produced.
Yes. Well, absolutely. That's an interesting thought there. All right. All right. I have another question. Actually, I want you guys, is there a question that you guys have for the other party? Like either for me, like say, Brandon, if you have a question for IzzyRock, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to know for yourself?
I'm in pretty okay contact with IzzyRock, so I usually clear up my questions through Facebook Messenger.
All right.
How much time, like a week, do you spend on your podcast? Because you edit you have what, 3 shows?
Yeah, we release 3 episodes a week, so it's a lot of time. I work 3rd shift, which I'm going to cut out of here probably after this question.
Yes.
So I take my laptop to work and I edit. I have a half an hour break and 2 15-minute lunches. On that 45 minutes of my day, I sit and I edit podcasts. At home, I'm spending a little bit of time, but I don't take away the time from my family or my wife, and I think that's important. My wife might tell you differently. When she sees me with headphones on, she may think I'm sitting there editing when I might be watching a YouTube video or something like that.
Okay.
But I invest a lot of time into it, hours per week. I don't know how many. I don't know if I'd be sad if I counted them up. But I think like the passion that I have for it, and I believe it's a good cause. And exposing, like Coffee with Idiots podcast is one of my favorite podcasts, and they do DATV, they do a public access show that I was actually part of. And
what happened on that?
It was you have to watch TBTV to find out.
Has that came out yet? Is that episode 4?
Yeah, that's episode.
All right, well, I'll be looking out for that. So no spoilers.
But yeah, I would ask Brandon, what's your favorite pudding?
My favorite pudding. You know, people might give me crap about this, but I love tapioca. Not the fudge.
Why do I feel like there's an inside joke there?
Watch TBTV to find out.
Before you go, Izzy, if you're going to go anytime soon, I just wanted to say, you were the person that came on our podcast at that point where you said that most podcasts go to the graveyard. And you're the person that shoveled us out of that grave. So you're the reason we keep doing what we're doing. So
yeah,
thank you for
if
that.
somebody is out there and they are doing podcasts and you are getting 10 listeners, 15 listeners, I would imagine that that's pretty frustrating over a period of time that you're not seeing your numbers grow. And I would advise you, if you were sitting in a room with 15 people talking to you, listening to you, would you be happy with that? If 15 people were sitting there listening to you have a conversation, you'd be like, 15 people are listening to me.
Yeah, I would wish the number was higher. I think a lot of people would.
Yeah, but if you're not actually trying to seek money, you just want to get your voice out. I think, I don't look at my numbers for podcasts. I look a couple times a year for Gym City Podcast, but like they're always not as much as you think that they should be in your head. And I think that if you're happy with that, and you're happy with sitting down and talking with the person that you're talking to, having a conversation, that's really what should carry you on, and you'll build an audience. Now, if you're doing it for 5 years and you still see those same 15 people, maybe at that point. But I don't know. Don't give up your dream. You might find your voice one day. And there is a graveyard of podcasts that quit after 5.
Yes.
If you like doing it, why not do it?
Absolutely.
I forgot what I was going to say. You can take the camera away from me now.
All right, sorry. Well, I have one last question on this subject. Do you guys think that podcasting is the newest artistic platform, as in comparison to people starting a music band and playing music, and stand-up comedians going on live stage and performing jokes? Do you guys think podcast compares to an artistic platform?
I think it's up there. It's definitely something that I don't know if I would call myself an artist because I'm a podcaster, but it's a creation of some sort. So I think I think people consume it the same way that they would consume music, they would consume comedy. It's sort of it kind of lumps into that same big, broad category of media that we're consuming. So and there's a creative element. So yes.
We're artists.
Yes is the answer.
I guess I would lump it more into just a media. I blog and do journalism, and so I kind of lump it more into that than sort of a artistic pursuit. But yeah, I think it depends on the podcast. I think some are just completely informative, and then I think some, like the Storyteller that Izzy does, features artists. So I think in that way, there's an artist element to it.
Yeah, and nowadays we're seeing a lot of podcasts that are like Radio Lab, where if anybody understands editing and you listen to a Radio Lab episode, you understand hours went into producing this episode by many different people.
Yes.
And there's also podcasts like Serial or like some of the audio dramas that are out there. I would say they're artistic.
Yeah,
It's
I
almost
agree.
like writing I feel like when I listen to like hardcore history, like
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's like listening to an audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're painting ideas, they're painting words in a way where they spur on other ideas. So I think they're as powerful as stand-up comedy, music. I've definitely heard some podcast episodes that have inspired me to do things that I wouldn't normally do.
Yes, I've had that experience as well. I do personally agree that actually podcasting can make you a lot of things. Like if you treat it as an art, then that makes you an artist. But if you treat it as an educational tool, that would make you a teacher. So podcasting, and I can see that in music as well. Like with music, you can teach or you can just do it for entertainment. And IzzyRock is leaving us, so thank you for being on the show, sir.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
It was my honor having you on. Thank you.
It's my honor to be here. Daniel,
Yes.
Daniel, Ohio,
Yes.
on fire.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Jim City Podcast Stew. So Izzy is leaving.
later.
And we are about to go to commercial, but I'll share my last spot. Yes, with music, you can be a teacher or an artist. And with stand-up comedians, they can be teachers or an artist. And of course, I think, yeah, it can branch into different things. But you can be an artist in podcasting if you wish to be if you consider yourself an artist. So those are my thoughts. But this has been really good information from all of you guys. So before you guys leave the show tonight, do you have anything else to add that you want people to know about? Plugs or any thoughts you wish to share?
Check out coffeewithidiots.com for the latest episodes, which we never know when they're coming out.
Yeah, you'll find out when you go. I don't know.
Yes, on DATV, it's every Monday. Of course, once a month or once every 2 months, you have a new episode. Of course, you can catch the shows on YouTube.
Oh, that's TBTV.
That's TBTV.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the Coffee with... Oh, yeah, I got the two mixed up.
No, that's okay.
Coffee with Idiots, yes,
pretty
you
much
guys... I know you guys are like bi-weekly with your release dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yes, so go to their website, coffeewithidiots.com, and check them out. And of course, Jim City Podcasts with Libby, IzzyRock, and Mark, although lately he has been on hiatus, but he still has a hand in the show. And of course, the two Kevs, Killer Kev and Kev Nash. You can check them out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at jimcitypodcast.com.
Yeah, or on iTunes or Stitcher if you want to listen there. And we just really appreciate you having us on and just getting the word out.
Well, thank you for being here, guys. We are back with Ohio is on Fire. I am Daniel Diesel. This is the final message of the show. And I have a lot of things to give out to the people that I was in this 28-day challenge, 28-day podcast movement challenge with. A lot of people to thank as good as I can. I want to thank first Jared, Easley, and Dan Franks. They are the administrators and creators of this challenge. Thank you for teaching us how to podcast and to get the word out there. Thank you to Ernesto Aguilera. Thanks to Erin Solomon. She's a life coach from Chicago. Thanks to Sherman Graff, also from Chicago, Illinois. Thanks to Prince Brady she is a college student in New York City. Thank you to TJ Headley. She's the owner and founder and blogger TJ Tells It All. Then we got Jeff Levy, Lynn Elizabeth Smargus Smoomate. I hope I said that name right. I hope probably got it wrong, but thank you anyway. Bill McConnell, David Rosen. Then we got Patty Williams, Madeline Wright. You got Lindsay Murphy, Tamara Stallings, Julie Eddy. And then who else is on here? Gemma Bobima, big participant of this challenge. Jordane Brown, Vivian McNeedy. Then we got Becky Hadaway, Bew Henderson, Jamie Marshall, and then who else can I give a shout out to? Brady Hamby, definitely a big participant of this challenge. She's the executive director at ATX Vegans. Robert Bradley Miller, and then I'll give a shout out to 3 more people. Shout out to Stephen C. Phillips, shout out to Anthony Luciniti, and then Laura C.G. I'll do one more. Shout out to Will Treasure. So that's as many as I can think of. There was over 200 of y'all. So thank you to each and last one of you that I shared this challenge with. Next Wednesday night, I will have Jesse Noble. He is the creator of Gym City Comic Con. I've actually worked with him for the last 2 years over the Comic Book League, so we're decent friends now. And he's excited to be on Ohio's on Fire. It's something he can cross off his bucket list. He's always wanted to be on. And he will be in this studio next Wednesday night. We'll talk comic books in Gym City Comic Con 2018. My final thoughts on podcasting. It reminds me of being a little kid. Like when you go play Little League Baseball, or if you're the star of the play, or whether you just stagehand for a play. A lot of kids do. I know, I think that for podcasting, it's not a little kid thing because they're busy in school and doing other things to build for the future. Of course, they play sports, they go outside and play, and do, of course, they do, the 4-H club is what I'm thinking of, where they do farm work. They're busy doing that stuff. And they go out there, that's their way of contributing to the world at a young age. And really, once you leave school, I mean, then everything changes. A lot of things change. And for those that feel like they really want to put something out there and they can't do that anymore because they're no longer in school, podcasting is really the new platform to do that, to really accomplish that feat. Because we mentioned earlier, there's being a music artist, you can start a band in your garage and just hammer away at the drums and strum away at the guitar. You can write jokes if you're a good writer and become a stand-up comedian. And then anything you think of as an adult, you just got. It's important that you feel good. Whatever you wind up doing in life, you feel you're proud. You just got to take pride in your work. Podcasting, I would say, in the 21st century, is really the newest art form to be made available for someone to get into, and you should appreciate for what it is. And I would recommend it to someone who, if they were a little kid, they love to go out and do stuff. Regardless if they got paid money or not. If you had that feeling when you was a little kid, more than likely that hasn't really changed that much when you're an adult. I believe podcasting would be for you. It's your way of putting something out there, giving back to the community, not knowing if you'll get anything back. Yes, podcasting is the newest creation for all of us to have a shot in, to really have a hand in. And you know what? It's here to stay. There's not going to be. I was thinking there's going to be a crash in podcasting. Perhaps maybe the popularity will go down, but it's not going anywhere either. Music didn't go anywhere. Making movies didn't go anywhere. It's never going anywhere. Podcasting is going to be around pretty much as long as I live, pretty much until the end of time. Whether it's the internet or some other platform that allows for audio to be uploaded, podcasting is here forever. And those of you that care about podcasting, it's up to you how you want to leave your legacy in the podcasting field. It's all up to you. And it really is up to you and no one else. So those are my final thoughts. So, I'm going to play a song by Coldplay called Talk, because when you do podcasting, all you got to do is talk and let the magic happen. So we'll play that to leave the show tonight. So until next Wednesday night when I have Jesse Noble from Gym City Comic Con, I have him on. Until next Wednesday night, Dayton, Ohio, Wright State University, Pod Squad, that's the way it is.